General?
And so there's a geostrategic context.
General, are you suggesting that Vladimir Putin had a point then when he suggested that Turkey, in a way, was aiding ISIS?
Well, all along there's always been the idea that Turkey was supporting ISIS in some way. We know they've funneled people going through Turkey to ISIS. Someone's buying that oil that ISIS is selling. It's going through somewhere. It looks to me like it's probably going through Turkey. But the Turks haven't acknowledged that.
All right, welcome to The Lead. I'm John Berman in for Jake today. We begin with our world lead. The battle against ISIS, the most dangerous and complicated conflict on earth, just got more dangerous and more complicated. Turkey shot down a Russian warplane near its border with Syria, saying the Russian jet violated Turkish airspace and ignored 10 warnings in 5 minutes. A search and rescue mission has been launched, but the fate of the 2 ejected pilots is still unclear. Russia is claiming one of them is dead, and there are reports the other has been captured. Russia is also saying that one of its Marines was killed in the rescue operation. Moscow is furious. Russian President Vladimir Putin called this, quote, a stab in the back that will have serious consequences. I want to get right to CNN's Barbara Starr at the Pentagon. Barbara, what are U.S. officials telling you?
Well, John, they are monitoring those Russian reports that at least one of the Russian pilots is dead. But clearly, Washington wanting this situation not to escalate out of control, trying to keep it calm. And one reason may be that right now, at this hour, the Pentagon cannot say for sure that the Russian plane was shot down inside Turkish airspace. Turkey says it warned the Russian jet 10 times it was violating Turkish airspace before ordering its F-16s to shoot down the Russian aircraft. President Obama putting his full support behind the NATO ally.
Turkey, like every country, has a right to defend its territory and its airspace.
The U.S. calculates the Russians may have been inside Turkey for less than 30 seconds. Less clear is exactly where the border may be.
The incident happened, at the border. That much I can tell you. But beyond that, we're still trying to collect and sift through all the data.
The Russian plane took off from the Syrian airfield at Latakia, heading north. The U.S. monitoring the entire time using radars and radios.
We were able to hear everything that was going on. Obviously, these are on open channels.
As the plane went down, video posted on social media shows Turkish-supported rebels shooting at the 2 Russian pilots. Heavy fire from the ground, rebels calling for the pilot's capture. A Russian helicopter searching for the second pilot, also apparently under attack and crashing. A Russian Marine killed on the failed rescue mission. CNN could not independently confirm the video. Russian President Vladimir Putin called the shootdown a stab in the back.
In any case, neither our pilots nor our jet posed any threat to the Turkish Republic.
Putin says his planes were targeting ISIS, but the U.S. says the Russians only started flying in this area in the last few days and were targeting rebels that Turkey supports. Turkey defending its actions.
Everyone should know that Turkey has the right to respond if its airspace is violated, despite repeated warnings.
The question now, is Putin really angry, or does he have a more immediate goal?
He believes that if he maintains his cool, that countries like France, Great Britain, and he hopes also the United States will allow him at the big table, and that he will then get a de facto sphere of influence over Syria.
Now, U.S. officials say they hope this incident will finally convince Putin to stop fighting the rebels who are fighting Bashar al-Assad and instead fight ISIS. That's the change in strategy that Washington wants to see. But don't hold your breath just yet. John?
All right, Barbara Starr of the Pentagon, thanks so much. Remarkable video of that incident. Now, CNN senior international correspondent Nick Payton-Walsh is just back from the front lines of the battle against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. Now Nick is in Istanbul in Turkey, which is oddly enough, Turkey now the front line in this battle against Syria with this plane shot down. Nick, what's the reaction there?
Well, Turkey, frankly, staunchly defiant about what it did today. And I think in their justification, they say this is not the first time Russia has, in their opinion, openly flaunted their violation of their airspace. I mean, at the beginning of Russian raids back in late September, there were a number of similar instances. Russian and Turkish officials met and tried to hammer out any confusion there may have been. And it clearly seems today to be a very defiant move by the Turkish military here, saying they made these 10 warnings in 5 minutes, showing a map, showing where they violated airspace. It seems, if you look at the map, actually, potentially they came in twice, hard to properly define, and finding NATO standing firmly behind them too, although many other NATO members being quite de-escalatory in their rhetoric. But Turkey has a broader game here. You know, the Turkmen rebels, you saw in Barbar's report, firing at both the plane and the rescue helicopters. They are closely allied to the Turkish government. There's a sense of protection that the state here wants to yield towards them, although they are inside Syria. And there's been a lot of heavy bombing in the area around where those Turkmens are in the past week or so, prompting, in fact, the Turkish to consider taking a complaint about that to the UN Security Council. So Turkey has a much broader agenda here than just that one airspace violation, but they clearly wanted to send a message to Moscow. That message may have been heard, potentially. We are seeing mostly diplomatic and economic responses from the Kremlin at this stage. You know, Vladimir Putin, his venture into Syria, many see as a response to how the things in Ukraine hadn't gone so well for him. Well, moving into Syria, they had a big initial launch, a lot of state media pumping up their success, but then there was a downing of the airliner over the Sinai. Now they've lost their first two airmen, one Marine, one pilot, I should say, possibly more in this incident. It's not going particularly well, but perhaps I think many hope maybe this may focus Putin against ISIS. I have to be honest, though, a NATO member blasting a Russian jet out of the sky, that just awakens all of Putin's old animosity towards the NATO bloc. I think we could see more complications in what's already a very complicated piece of airspace already, John.
No, it's an alarming headline when a NATO member shoots down a Russian plane. We're hearing it was only over Turkish airspace for about 30 seconds. Is that enough time? Is that enough warning to give to that Russian jet, Nick?
Hard to tell. I mean, you know, in the defense of the Turkish here, the Russians have put videos of their planes buzzing US drones over Syrian airspace. They've been very clear to tell the world they're there and they want to be there and they want to be wherever they want to be to some degree. We probably will never know with great transparency precisely how long they were in Turkish airspace. And obviously, the Russians say they never were in the first place and the strike occurred inside Syrian airspace. So, yes, you could argue that those warnings in the 5 minutes may not all have been given while the jet was in Turkish airspace, but you know, it's moving around, it's moving in and out. Right. The border itself can, some say, be hard to define at many stages, but doesn't take away the escalatory rhetoric here. You know, we have to step back and remind ourselves we're not in the 80s, but the idea of NATO and Russian aircraft duking it out in the skies over a war zone is terrifying, to say the least, John.
And as you point out, it was about more than just this one incident. Nick Payton-Walsh for us in Istanbul. Thank you so much, Nick. Now, earlier today, I spoke with retired General Wesley Clark, who's also the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. I asked him about the significance of this incident.
When a NATO nation shoots down a Russian aircraft, it's still an act by Turkey, not by NATO. These aircraft are not under NATO control. They're under Turkish operational control. They're flying as a result of Turkish air missions. And NATO is not running an air defense umbrella that's integrated, to the best of my knowledge.
Bigger picture, this, though, has to do with the complexity of the conflict in Syria. President Obama said today this illustrates the ongoing problem with the Russian operations. The president suggested if Russia was actually targeting ISIS in areas that ISIS controlled, this might not have happened.
Well, that's exactly right. But this is the larger context. What you have here is no political agreement. And so you have these people, these countries trying to work together and obfuscate the fundamental underlying disagreement. Let's be very clear. ISIS is not just a terrorist organization. It is a Sunni terrorist organization. That means it blocks and targets Shia. And that means it's serving the interests of Turkey and Saudi Arabia, even as it poses a threat to them, because neither Turkey nor Saudi Arabia want an Iran, Iraq, Syria-Lebanon bridge that isolates Turkey and cuts Saudi Arabia off.
General,
And so
are you
there's a
suggesting-
geostrategic context.
General, are you suggesting that Vladimir Putin had a point then when he suggested that Turkey, in a way, was aiding ISIS?
Well, all along there's always been the idea that Turkey was supporting ISIS in some way. We know they've funneled people going through Turkey to ISIS. Someone's buying that oil that ISIS is selling. It's going through somewhere. It looks to me like it's probably going through Turkey. But the Turks haven't acknowledged that. When ISIS got started, it was put together because a group of Sunni zealots were fighting against Bashar Assad, who is aligned with Iran. This is part of the broader struggle in the Middle East. Now, Putin would like to dirty Turkey by saying it's supporting terrorists. But the truth is that he's supporting terrorists. I mean, the tactics used by the Assad regime have been terror tactics. They're dropping barrel bombs on innocent civilians. So there's no let's say, good guy in this. This is a power struggle for the future of the Middle East, using terror tactics and terrorists.
Well, it's just one more complication in an area that is already a powder keg. General Wesley Clark, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.